Yeah. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I hope so I'm live now, and I'm hoping that I'm clearly audible and my screen is visible. Can you just quickly confirm if everything is fine from my side or not? Okay. Once you confirm, then we can move forward with this session today. Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening, Dheeraj. Good evening, Om. Good evening, Ratri. I see a lot of population right now. So crowd is kind of good today. Yeah. Good evening, Ram. Good evening, everyone. Hello, everyone. Okay. Just guys, can you just confirm if everything is fine from my side and everything is working great so that we can move forward now. Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. So now, yeah, hello, everyone. Okay. Fine. So we can move forward today now. So we have this Node.js backend bootcamp. Okay. So now in this bootcamp, what are we exactly going to build? We will be building API, we will be building services, we will be building backend services in this total bootcamp. Okay. So first and most important thing that we are going to build is services or APIs. Okay. And what kind of APIs or services are we going to exactly build? Those will be our RESTful APIs, okay, by using Node and Express. That's what we are exactly going to build in this bootcamp right here. Okay. So today, most of the part that we are going to cover will be kind of theoretical. We will understand what is Node and what exactly we need Express for, what MongoDB is, what database is, and then we will be looking into the next concept that is CRUD operations. Okay. So CRUD operations and RESTful APIs that we'll look into. So mostly we will cover the theoretical part that we need for this bootcamp. And if any other theoretical parts comes in our way, we will also discuss that too. Okay. So for now, I will start with the basic that is Node.js for now. Okay, today will be the most basic part of theoretical concept. If anything we goes beyond in practical, that will be in creation of our code, code sandbox environment and that only. Okay, yeah, the duration will last till 1 hour. So we started at 7. We will close at 8 o'clock. And for the attendance, I am telling you in prior that attendance form will be shared only after 7:45. 7:45, we'll share the attendance. By 8, we'll end the session. And before 7:45, I do not want anyone to spam in the chat for attendance link. Okay. I hope so you understand that. Okay. Okay. Fine. Great. So now let's quickly get into understanding what Node.js is, why are we exactly using this hub, and what will be MongoDB, and why exactly we'll be using MongoDB and other things. Okay. Or else, if you want, I can give you a basic intro, but no problem. We'll just directly get into the Node.js part. So first thing, what exactly is Node.js? Okay, uh, what is Node.js? That's the first part that I want to cover right here. So let's quickly get into it. What exactly Node.js is, and what framework exactly Node.js is? Why are we using it? Why don't we use anything else? Okay. Now, if you talk about what Node.js is, so Node.js is a library, or else you can call it as JavaScript runtime environment. Okay, so I will name it as JavaScript runtime environment. Okay, so this is what our Node.js is. So it's on basic, it is based upon JavaScript. So for this case, I hope so you have a knowledge of basic JavaScript and you do not completely lack the basics of JavaScript. Okay. So why? Because we need JavaScript to build up our Node.js concepts right here. So what Node.js exactly is? Node.js is JavaScript runtime environment, and what exactly does it allow? Okay, that allows us to run JavaScript codes outside of web browser. Okay. Now, why are we taking the concept of outside web browser? Why exactly? Because the website that we're building, those all website will most probably will be running on browsers itself. Okay. Now, the concept of APIs, when the concept of APIs was introduced, you know that APIs do not run on browsers. API mostly runs in the backend on any servers that you create. So for that reason, we needed a language, or else we needed we can call it as environment too. We needed an environment to run those JavaScript code not on the browser but on the servers. So for that particular need, we created a Node.js. Okay, not we, but actually someone created a Node.js and we are using it. Okay, so the basic definition of the Node.js will be it is a runtime environment that allows us to run JavaScript code outside of the web browser. Exactly where? Exactly on the servers. Okay, so whatever backend services we create, we host them up on the server, and then we use those endpoints to get whatever service we need to get. Okay, that is what our Node.js is used for. Okay, fine. Okay, now what's the next thing that I would add in this case is now whatever web browser you are talking about. Okay, whatever web browser we are talking in the standard terms. So all web browsers can be used. Okay, now what's the next thing? Let's add some more to it because just a definition would not be enough in this case. Okay. Now, with this Node.js introduction, what advantage do you have? Okay. So this adds that developers could run and execute. Okay, so that's what I mentioned earlier. So you are not running and executing your JavaScript code on browser, but now you are running and executing your JavaScript code on server. Okay, so this is a main point. So because all the backend services, all the APIs that we create, they will always be running on servers. So whatever backend server you choose, you have to run those on the servers, not on exactly browsers. So that's why we need Node.js. And what's the next thing that we can add? What are the kind of advantages that we have with the backend services? Okay. Along with this, I will also add one more thing. So where do we exactly run our front end? So front end will be running on browsers. So front end will be part of browsers, and backend will be part of what? Backend will be part of servers. So this is execution place. This is where front end and backend gets executed. So if you are having a front end, all the codes will get into browser. That will get executed on the browser itself. But if we are talking about the backend, separate backend services, then that will execute on servers only. No browsers will be involved in this particular case. Okay, guys, do not spam anything, or else you know that either you will get timed out of the chat, or else you will get blocked. So better do not do anything that will lead you to be getting blocked. Okay. Yeah, you can get the subtitles when the recording is available. For now, it would be quite difficult for me to change the settings again. Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah, I will be coming to that point too. Why APIs are used and other things. Okay. Yeah. So what is the property of our node? So first property, the main I will be discussing just two properties in this case. So first property is non-blocking IO. What is IO in this case? IO stands for input output. As a standard, we define it as. So what does non-blocking IO or is non-blocking input output stands for? Okay. Now, in this case, operations like input, what input operations? Reading files. Okay. In backend, we will be reading files. We will be reading JSON files. We will be reading other kinds of files. So for that case, we need this input operation. Next is querying database. So you would have learned DBMS in your colleges, or you would have learned something known as database, SQL, NoSQL, MySQL, MongoDB, something you have learned related to this case. Okay. So querying database is like fetching some data or is adding some data using query language. Okay. That's what querying database right here means. Now, Node.js also gives you a kind of upper head or is upper hand on this particular case too. Okay, fine. Now, next thing, so querying a data or else or making an API call. What API call are we going to make? We'll discuss an API, just the next concept that we are going to discuss. So do not worry about what all API calls, what all services we have. We will discuss everything one by one. Okay, fine. Great. Yeah. Okay. So this was the first property that our Node.js has. Okay. And what will be the next thing? What will be the next thing? So we also call Node.js as an event-driven kind of framework. Okay? A framework or else environment, whatever suits you best in calling that. Okay. So fine. Let me complete this part first. Okay. There is something more remaining in the non-blocking IO. Okay. Fine. So this was what all inputs and what all things are we going to take. Okay. So now let's kind of discuss what blocking model is. Okay. So now blocking model, what exactly does it do? So in case of blocking model, what happens is uh, the server waits for the IO operation to complete. Okay. IO operation to complete first of all. Okay. Before moving to next one. So it's like you have two tasks in a queue, and you first of all wait for the first task to complete, and then you go to the next task. Okay. It is kind of, you can call it as synchronous nature also. Like you would have listened to a property known as asynchronous. Okay. So async await kind of thing. So Node.js also supports async or as asynchronous operation too. It means simultaneously many operations will be running at a given point. We do not wait for one operation to complete and then to shift to another operation. We exactly do what we exactly do is we go parallel with the operations. So one operation is going on, we will be running the second operation too. Okay, that's what asynchronous nature can be called as, and a kind of relation it has to with the blocking model too. Okay, so blocking model is server waits for the kind. Guys, if you see any spelling mistakes, kind of ignore it. That's not important thing that I am focusing on. So the server waits for the input output operation to complete before moving to next call. So first of all, if there is any operation running on, it will first of all wait for that operation to complete fully, and then it will move to the next operation. So we do not need this. We need a kind of non-blocking nature. So what exactly is non-blocking nature? So the just opposite of what blocking is defined as. So server do not waits for IO operation or is input output operation to complete before moving to next operation. Moving to next operation. That is what we have as a non-blocking nature. Okay, that is what we have as a non-blocking nature, and that's why we primarily kind of support this Node.js because it has a upper advantage in this particular case. So this was the first kind of, you can call it as first property that I defined. And what will be the next property? So next property is, yeah, just give me a moment. Yeah, so the next property will be event driven. Okay. So next major property that we have in terms of our Node.js, it is that event driven. So Node.js is also a event driven kind of uh, environment. Okay. So let me just write a description for that too. Okay. Yeah. So the second property is event driven. Yeah, Devesh. Good evening, Devesh. No subtitle. Yeah, Mono, you can wait for the recordings if you are having trouble with the language. Okay. Right now, the subtitles are not there. And once the recording is done, in that case, you can get the subtitles too. Wait a minute. I am getting it out over here. Is it okay if you don't know Chase and then no, that is not quite okay. Ahmed, we will be using JavaScript concepts in our Node.js. So for that reason, we will be needing that. Okay. Rajvardhan, congrats, Rajvardhan. Seeing you after many days in my bootcamp of classes. It's great listening to you that you got placed. Okay. Rajvardhan was a kind of very frequent student of mine. Congrats, guy. Okay, fine. So I have a question. W3 school is good for coding or C. Yeah, Tuba, it's kind of the best option that you can get. You can get GFG as the best option. W3 is also a good option. MDN is also a good option in terms of web development. Okay. If we talk about Node and Next, in that case, you should try official documents of Node and Next. Other than that, W3 School will give you a code tutorials. If you want to try it out, if you want the code trial, then it will be the best thing that you can go. Okay. Yeah. If you have any doubts, you can just directly write it in the chat. No need to write it anywhere else. Okay. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Node.js is non-blocking. Okay. I wrote it at earlier non-blocking IO. That is non-blocking input output. For just understanding, I just defined what blocking is and what non-blocking is. Node.js is non-blocking. Okay, fine. So now next thing is event driven. Okay. What is the difference between JS and Node.js? See, Janvi, the thing is, JS was created mostly to create websites that were running on browsers only. Okay. Now, in case of backend, we are not running the backend on the browsers only. We are running the backend on the servers. So for that particular case, the JavaScript, the normal JavaScript code was not working fine or was not able to work or was not able to execute on the server. So for that particular reason, we created another backend environment that was Node.js on basis of JavaScript only. The concepts of JavaScript will be used. So you have to have a knowledge of basic JavaScript. Okay. Yeah, obviously, we will be doing practical work too. It's not like I will just leave you with the theories. Okay. Yeah. Now, how does Node.js manages this non-blocking nature? So Node.js manages these non-blocking nature. Sorry, blocking nature by using event-driven method. Okay. What event-driven method is? I will just explain you. Okay. Yeah, the session will be 1 hour. Okay. Just do not focus much on the timing. I know I will be closing it up at the time itself. Do not worry about that. Okay. Fine. What event driven architecture is? Okay. So now in this case, what happens is when an input output operation is done. Okay. Whenever an input output operation is done or else is completed, operation is completed. In that case, what happens? Okay. So whenever an input output operation is completed, in that case, what we do, we trigger an event. Okay. We trigger event or else the Node.js triggers an event. And what event does it triggers? Okay. Along with the event and a callback. I hope so. You have a knowledge of what event is and what callback is. We if you have studied JavaScript, in that case, you will be having the knowledge of what event is, what callback is, what async await could be. Okay, fine. Okay. Now, the so how exactly? What is the function or what is the tool that controls this event-driven nature? So, in case of Node, we have event loop. Okay, Node supports event loop. Okay, and what does it does? So it continuously checks for all available events. Okay. So Node always supports the event loop and it is a basic framework for event driven nature of our Node.js in this particular case. Okay. Please, are you going to not exactly completing documentation of API, but creation of API. In that case, you can get a knowledge of that too. Not complete, but a partial knowledge of documentation too. Okay. Yeah, Fatima, if you do not know JS, and in that case, obviously you will not be getting anything out of this. Okay. You should know a basic of Node.js for going forward. Okay. Sorry, not Node.js, but JS is kind of much more compulsory in this case. No, Mansi, JavaScript is not so short that you can complete that in 2 days. It will take you time. Okay. For starters, I think we should understand. Yeah, obviously, you have to do that. Yeah, sure. I will try creating a MongoDB only series. Okay, fine. Because yeah, it's a great idea. I can create that. For that case, I can create a theory class, one practical class. Yeah, fine. We'll look into this and we'll try arranging that too. Okay. No need for React, but at least for the backend, you should know the node. Okay, that's important. Fine. So this was my event-driven nature. Okay. And this was a basic intro of Node. Why exactly are we using Node in this respective case? Now, let me try explaining you API, what API is, what API resources are, and what all operations are we going to use in our API. That's the next thing that I will explain to you. Okay, so next thing that we have is APIs. Now, APIs, what are APIs? Okay, why are we in need of this API? So, if you get in the full form of APIs, so APIs are popularly known as application program interface. Okay. why are we calling it as an interface? Okay, so we call something as interface if it is a kind of connecting dot between two points. Okay, so in same way, APIs will also be connecting dot between front end and back end. Okay, so it connects back end with front end. Okay, this is a basic functionality of API that we have. So whatever backend you create, if you want to connect it with the front end, you need to have an API for that particular backend. API is kind of a lock, sorry, key to a lock. Without that, you would not be able to access any backend services that we are going to create. So that is why API is kind of necessary. Okay. Yeah, Ticket will try adding the MongoDB series too, okay, because get element by sorry, get by ID and find other things. We will explain that in there too, okay? Fine, okay? Yeah. So now what it does, okay, it helps two computers. You can call it as computers, or else we can also call it as two frameworks or backend and frontend, okay? Two computers to communicate with each other, okay, over internet. Now, so we can call it front end as one computer and back end as another. So for this case, so let me call our, see, this is my front end, fine. And then comes my back end. So back end, so this is front end, this is back end. Now what I want to bridge this gap between front end and back end. Why? Because obviously I will be creating front end and back end separate, okay? uh, we will be creating that. So now to link them both, what we need is to link them both, we need a connection. So the connection that we have will be API. Okay. Now the connection that we have in between those will be what? Will be the APIs. Okay. So for that reason, we need APIs exclusively for our case. Okay. Yeah, we can see what else series new we can add. Okay. Okay. Fine. Dheeraj, you will find somewhat difficulty in understanding this because for the theory part, you can kind of understand, but when we get into the code, you will find it somewhat difficulty. Okay. And Ariel will explain you, will show you how APIs are created. Okay. Do not worry about that. Okay. So this was what we call it as API. Okay. Now, now we are talking about REST APIs. Okay. So what exactly are we mentioning in this case? Okay, what exactly are we trying to discuss in this case? So REST API or else RESTful APIs. Just a minute. Yeah. So now in this case, whenever we are interacting with any API, okay. So in that case, the fundamental concept of all these APIs is resource. Okay. So every time if we try adding a data, we will be adding a data to resource. We try fetching a data, we will be fetching a data from resource. So resource is a kind of very important point over here. Okay. So the rest, everything is treated as resource. Okay, this is the important point that we have. So everything, every data that you have, everything will be treated as resource. So be it a database, be it a file of all the students, be it a file of all the to-do list data, everything we will be treating as a resource. Okay, so that is why we will be creating APIs. You add a data, you will be adding it to resource. You fetch a data, you will be fetching that data to the from the resource. So that is what we have a main concept as. Now the question arises: everything that we do over internet, those are done on a protocol, or else we have some communication mechanism. So APIs that we create, okay, all the APIs that we create, they all work on HTTP. Okay, HTTP methods. What all HTTP methods we have, I will explain you just after some moment. But try to understand that all the communication between front and back end, all the communication from the APIs, they all occur by using HTTP. Okay, HTTP methods. This is an important point right now. Okay, fine. Yeah. So now HTTP methods will be used. Now let me quickly just kind of understand, sorry, explain you what resources are in this respective term. Okay. So next thing is resources, because I have mentioned resources, so I have to explain exactly what resources are, because without that we would not be able to move forward. Okay, fine. So now if you talk about resources, what are resources? So in this term, we are talking about DB data. In this term, we are talking about information, anything that can be accessed. Okay. So if I give you a formal definition, any piece, yeah, obviously you can use Python for backend. You are free to use that too. We have Django framework, right? So we can go with that too. Yeah. So any piece of information or data, okay, information or data that could be identified or assessed. Okay, identified or assessed, we will call it as a resource. Okay, any information or data, whatever we are talking about, anything that you can assess or else you can identify, that is what we will be calling as resources. Okay, identified. Fine. Okay, that's what we will be calling as resources. So be it any data in database, be it any images, be it whatever possible case, everything that we can identify and we can assess, that is what we will be calling as resources. Now, let's take an example. What all things can we actually consider in case of resources? Okay, so it could be any order data. So you have e-commerce platforms, okay, and you have other platforms where you would be exchanging data and other things. So let's take an example of e-commerce platform. And on an e-commerce platform, what exactly will our data be? Okay, so in case of e-commerce, we will have an order, we will have a product. Okay, so along with the product, what is the next thing that we will have is, or even a file, okay, anything, or even a file, everything will come under term of resources. A larger subset is resources. Okay. We have sorry, larger set is resource, and inside that we have subsets of data, we have subsets of information, we have subsets of file. So whatever you have, you will consider that in a resource only. Now, the question arises: how exactly are we going to assess those resources? Okay. Okay, that is the next question. So let's add that to how to, sorry, assess resources. Okay, how to assess any resource. Now, the question should be like this. Okay, is it necessary to have ordered data only? No, it's not necessary. Sometimes the resource cannot only be data. Okay, fine. Okay, so it's not quite necessary that you will just have data. You will be having other things too. Yeah, wait, Arif. We'll explain you what RESTful API is. Just give me a moment. Okay. Okay, fine. So now, yeah, so how to access those resources? Now, for each cases, we will be creating a service. Okay, so we will have a service, and each service will be accessed by using URL. Okay, what URL stands for? URL will be Uniform Form Resource Locator. Okay, so each service that you create, everything will be accessed by URL only, and you cannot access anything. So, see, the backend is created, and whatever resource you are trying to access, everything will have a endpoint. That is what I am calling it as URL right now. Okay. So in that case, whenever a backend service is created, you will have a URL getting created, and you will access those resources by using that particular URL only. Okay, fine. If I take an example, suppose you have student DB and you want to access the student information. So you will have one URL, and you can access those data by using that particular URL only. Okay, not any other URL will be working in that case. So uniform resource locator or else endpoint. We famously also call it as API endpoint too in our case. Okay. That will be identified. Sorry, not identified. That will be identified. Identity, not identified, but actually identified. Okay. So any data that you can identify and anything that you can access will come into resources. Okay, fine. Previously, I was just covering APIs. Okay, nothing else then. Yeah, you can take care of the tens too. If you want, I can write it as identified too. No problem. You can kind of ignore the spelling mistakes if I make, because while teaching, I do not have that focus on spellings. Okay. Okay, is it audible? I think so. There was just please confirm if I'm audible or not. Fine. No, resources cannot be packages. If you're talking about modules and packages in that term, so obviously resources cannot be called as system. Okay. I will try adding that too. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this was resources. Guys, can you confirm if my screen is visible to you? If my screen or not? Just a minute. Yeah, guys, am I audible? Yeah, if anyone could please fix why is cracking. So yeah, there's some small issue from my side. Uh, yeah, I understand. Okay. Okay, fine. Is it fine now? Just confirm if it is fine now. Uh,